There's a question here or a challenge here for anybody in the room. Stories about explaining internet memes to non-internet savvy, to for lack of a better word, normal people.
Can we exclude explaining Desert Bus to people though?
Yeah.
Excluding Desert Bus itself.
Yeah.
I have a story that's similar to that vein of trying to explain Pokemon Go to my mom. Because I was showing her the app and how there was like, oh, it looks like there's a little Pokemon in the room.
Was she like?
The little bit of that, yeah.
But there's no Pokemon in the room.
It's cool, and you go different places, and there's Pokemon, and it shows up, and it's like, yeah, and then you swipe, and I was showing her the thing, and she's like, well then, but like, how do you know where it is? I was like, oh, well, it lets me know, it'll show up on the little map. She's like, but who puts them there? And I realized she was like, there was a part of her brain that couldn't process the fact that it wasn't like there's a Pokemon, an invisible Pokemon that you can only see with the phone living in your house right now. And now that I have my phone, I can actually see it.
She's got like her broom out, like,
right.
Where is it? Show me where it is.
She's like a slight second out of time, so you don't see it, but at another dimension, it exists. And so my phone can now sync those two dimensions. And it was adorable that I was just like the augmented reality was just something that she couldn't process. What was more likely was invisible Pokemon infesting all of our spaces, and who put them there? Mm-hmm. Who let the Pokemon out?
Mm-hmm. I guess Niantic, I guess, is the people who did that.
Well, mystery solved.
Yeah. Why did they do it? Who knows? Sinister motives, certainly.
Speaking of which, why does my honk button work?
Probably because the sound is turned down right now.
Oh.
They've taken all my joy from me.
My moment on memes is, first off, I thought it said Mimi.
Or May, yeah.
And so I was like, why are we making memes? Like, I don't understand what a meme is, but somebody dial me in.
And
then somebody tried to explain it to me that it was like something everybody likes, and then they share it, and I'm like money? So my first one, that wasn't a meme, but my first one was Desert Bus 7. Somebody chatted me in the chat about what did I do IRL. And I didn't know what that meant, so I had to ask somebody. I'm like, what does IRL mean? And they were like, in real life. Oh. And I'm like, okay, hold on.
This isn't real life?
This is just fantasy.
But I am in real life, and they're like, no, but they want to know what you do when you're not. And I'm like, this is blowing my mind. So I think that memes sort of fall in that same capacity for me.
I like that saying, calling, you pronouncing meme or as Mimi is itself a meme. Which is a nice sort of recursive aspect to it. Pretty much anything will become.
Well, I mean, the original definition of a meme is just it's kind of like the intellectual analog of a gene, right? It's coined by Richard Dawkins. It's a packet of information that's transmitted culturally.
Right. It's sort of a sort of virus or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't there a Doctor Who episode that one of the villains was the all repeating meme? Sorry,
probably.
That sounds plausible.
That seems like something Russell T Davies would do.
Yeah.
Twice I've had to explain what magic was to judges because
Wait, to magic judges?
No,
to real judges.
I know real judges.
Yeah, a real judge.
Let's take a step back. Yes. Dan is a lawyer.
IRL, because I know that.
Yeah.
Hold on. Break.
Oh.
Am I over far enough, Paul?
Yeah. You don't want to go over too far, or else you'll grind.
Get caught in the gravel.
All right, stop. Open. Close. You got it.
Yeah! 2 bus stops.
But
let's
nobody
go.
got on though, Serge.
What?
Nobody got on.
And nobody ever gets off.
What do you mean nobody got?
Well, you opened the door, but I didn't see anybody.
I got a second
We're
bus
on
stop,
the
James.
bus now.
I did it. Yeah.
The adherence
Yeah.
of the repeated
Got your
meme.
mic pack on?
Sorry, Dan, were you telling a story of the judge? Did you have to explain a meme to a judge?
There we go.
I had to
Magic.
explain magic to a judge because a long time ago I used to actually be a magic judge, and so I met a lot of people in my city. And so one day I was in Superior Court, and there was a trial going on, and so I just sat down just to watch it because at the time I think some of my colleagues were like, they were prosecutors. I was a prosecutor at the time, and they were up there. And the jury walks in, and I look over and I spot the jury foreman. I'm like, okay, I know that guy, so I had to leave. But because I worked for the prosecutor's office at the time and I knew that guy, I had to go into court and say, okay, full disclosure, I knew that guy. I don't think he saw me, but I have to now explain it to the judge. And the judge's like, how do you know him? And I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be a fun one.
You start with like, judge to judge here.
Yeah.
Let me let you know, magic.
I play a collectible children's card game competitively with adults.
It's not children.
So, like, I tried to, like, be as vague as possible. Like, well, I help run events at a local comic book shop, and he attends them. What kind of events? God, do you need to know this? And I'm like, well, it's a card game. Like poker? No, not like poker. So, like, on the, like, I think I did this on the record, too. So there's a recording out there somewhere of me saying all of this.
It's like trying to be clear that it wasn't like gambling or like
Yeah.
anything that was,
Nothing
Yeah.
nefarious.
Yeah. And, like, it didn't matter in the end, but, like, you have to disclose it for ethical reasons. And then the second time was when I was handling traffic court, which is if you get, like, a speeding ticket or something like that, you can go fight that in court, and I'm the prosecutor that has to, like, prove that you were speeding. And, like, that day, one of the regulars from my local shop shows up and is like, oh, it's you. And I'm like, oh, you. Okay, this is going to get awkward really quick. Why? I have to disclose how I know you. You do? Yup. And
So
so
it's-
again, I have to go onto the record and say, well, I know this guy. Why? Do events at a local store. What kind of events? Here we go again.
So it's any time that somebody's in the jury,
Conflict of interest.
there's like you have to just
It doesn't create a conflict of interest, but it's always recommended that you disclose that, so that way...
that it doesn't create a conflict.
Yeah, so that way I tell the judge, hey, I know this guy, I don't think it creates a conflict of interest, but if, he has a problem with it, or if you have a problem with it, now instead of, just showing up after the fact and causing more chaos, it's like, I can say this now, and you can make the ruling on that.
I just love that. You're like, I was playing them and they sinkholed me on turn 2 and I'm holding a grudge.
Yeah, I cannot.
What?
I cannot be objective about this.
Yeah, they played they played smallpox in a casual format and
Yeah, it speaks to the character of this person.
There was nothing casual about smallpox.
Nothing
That's
casual.
PSL 4 territory.
exactly.
I actually went up for jury duty just a few months ago, and it was an interesting experience. They had brought it they had to bring in so many people.
Oh.
So many people got dismissed from
Wow.
the whole process.
It got down to Paul. That's how you know.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is that
Sorry.
there's so many. The reasons for dismissal were very loose. I was surprised at how easy. I was like, oh man, I could have totally gotten out of this, but I didn't.
Have I told you my jury duty story?
I don't know.
So I was living in Toronto, big city in Canada. I get called up for jury duty on school break, and I have 2 kids, and I've taken the week off as vacation, so I don't have to pay for childcare. The last thing I want to do is go sit in a courtroom for the whole week. So I go and I go in the first Monday, and I talk to the guy. I talk to the guy in charge of all the jury selection, and I say, listen, I don't want to do this. I will do it next week. I will do it any other time. I am happy to do jury duty. I can't afford to do it because I have kids and blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. He says, too bad. That's too bad you're here.
Wow. Yeah.
I was like, okay. So the next day, I went in dressed up as Harley as I could get. I had the pack of smokes rolled up in my thing. I had my leather jacket on.
Of course, your full arm tattoos.
So I had my full arm tattoo. I had the, the ripped jeans on and the big Harley boots. And so I got called into 4 or 5 different courtrooms. And so I go in and sit in the little room for a minute, and I just my hair was nasty, and I got on my mouth, and they were like, okay, we don't want her, so I get bounced. So I go back to the waiting room with all the other ones, and these two old guys started to befriend me because they realized I was up to something. Because all we got paid was a subway token to go.
Like the restaurant or the transit?
No, the little teeny transit. So the next day, because I still had childcare issues, I still wanted to go home. I still didn't want to do jury duty. Happy to do it, not that week.
Yeah.
So I went in as hippie as I could manage. I put on the peasant skirt, and I put the braids in my hair, and I had like the
You're mixing it
Stevie
up.
Nicks shawl, and I had a bunch of weird jewelry, and so again, I get called into a whole bunch of courtrooms, right? They're like, no. Like, okay, so now these two guys, these older guys, are both in their 70s, now buy me lunch, right? Because they're like, okay, this is fun. So the third day I show up in a black dress, completely black, really severe hair, greased my hair back, put on really black eye makeup, some big goddess jewelry thing, right? Lots of bangly jangles, and oh my God. So I got in there, I got called into one courtroom, which they kicked me out of. And then the guy who was organizing it all, he said, okay, you made your point, you can go home now. I'm like, thanks.
That was way more thorough. Like, I got called. They brought in like there must have been over 100 people like in the little lobby area for
Yeah.
these like 2 court cases that they were doing. I got brought in. I was one of the first people brought in, and so I had no particular objections to it. Or I realized afterwards that I could have said that it would be inconvenient for me because it was inconvenient for me. It was going to be during one of the PPRs, but I was but I was like, okay, and then they accepted, and I sat down, and but then as people kept coming through, I think both lawyers like used up all of their like
The passes, yeah, that's
passes. Because all they could ask was like the name and like their occupation, and I don't know what they were looking for, but a bunch of people were like, "This is my occupation." They're like, "Okay, we don't want you." And
They didn't do like a full slate of questions. They didn't, like,
not really, no.
Canada's different.
Okay, interesting.
And then and lots of people had excuses, which were like some of them were legit. It seemed legitimate excuses. Some of them were like, it would be a long commute in. And stuff like that. Like it seemed like the barrier for, I guess they were just like, we don't want people on the jury who don't want to be here because you're probably not going to do a good job, I guess was the sort of idea.
Well, that's when you get that's when you can get a weird wild card where like they'll just vote against the rest of the people just out of spite.
Yeah.
Which, as a defense attorney, I'm like hit or miss on because I'm like, I'll take a hung jury any day, but I also don't want you to be like, no, everybody, we should convict this person,
Right.
and like have them like swing it the opposite
Oh,
direction
wow.
because then it's like,
Also the lawyer for the defense was not very experienced, I guess, with his job. So he kept forgetting that he was like whose turn it was in order to dismiss the thing. So he'd be like, we're going to dismiss that person, and then there'd be like a little discussion, be like, it's actually it's the prosecution's turn to dismiss, and the prosecution goes like, fine by us, because they know that the other guys. Anyway, it was silly, and then like went through the entire process. It took a really long time, and then a week later, which was like 2 weeks before the actual thing, I got a letter saying that the guy decided to settle. So
He's
we
like,
don't.
thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, so we don't need to
Interesting.
go through the whole process anyway. So it's
I've
like,
never been called. I've never.
Neither have I.
yeah,
Like, was it a phone call or the mail?
Yeah,
It's
you
a-
get in the
it's a
mail. This
mail.
is the second time I got called.
A van shows up to your door.
Yeah.
They put a bag over your head
And they
throw
take you,
in.
yeah.
What if you don't
Or is
check
that
your
just
mail?
America?
Like, how much trouble do you get in if you've been
They-
called for jury duty?
They will come for you.
Yeah,
They'll come. Oh, yeah.
theoretically, they can issue like a bench warrant or
Bench
whatever.
warrant.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bench word?
Bench warrant.
the judge
See-
basically demands your appearance,
Yeah.
so you can be arrested on site and held
But-
on bail.
Oh,
But like literally
that
for
sounds
this
bad.
for this one, literally they were called in so many people that like the entire sort of lobby area of the courthouse was filled, and then they were like, okay, anybody who's still like arriving like in line, showing their ID and stuff, you guys can go. We don't need you. So it's just like, oh,
You could have shown up 5 minutes late. And
Yeah,
no
well, it's
excuse.
like, well, that screw me for showing up on time, I guess.
Yep.
It just seemed like a very sort of arbitrary process.
And
Yeah.
are you eligible as soon as you turn 18? Are there any other conditions?
No, it's yeah. Once you're 18.
Yeah, I mean, there are various things that disqualify you.
Yes.
But, like, working for government agencies, I believe, disqualifies you, and various other things.
They can deem you too close to the crime if you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you know anybody, or like I said, there's lots of
Yeah.
ways to get disqualified.
But my point was, a lot of it is about a very snap judgment call. So you get two lawyers on the prosecution and the defense who look at you as a human being as you enter up into their little booth, and they make some snap decisions on whether they think you're socialist or you're left or right or fair or not fair. Or
Paul, it's awfully
have
shifty, yeah.
criminal.
Yeah, they can just swipe left on you.
It's,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
I
so-
mean, that's literally what it is.
So for me, that was where the play was, right? Was to make them see me as somebody else, because at that point my occupation was a child and youth worker, so that had judgment already attached to it, because it meant that I worked with addicts and criminals, and so I was probably always going to lean left, and so. But for me, the fun was the physical part, right? So that's if you had talked to me, but they judged me based on what clothes I had on.
You
right?
catfish justice.
Yeah.
You can't.
It was fun. Okay, I'm sorry. It was fun. I would have kept going. I would have gone the whole week with
I
different
believe it.
outfits too. I was.
I believe that.
Here's an interesting question, basically from the chat. Is property ownership relevant to it all? Like,
No.
in the States, do you have to be a property owner to be selected?
No.
I think so. By law in the states, it has to be across. Like you have to pull from a cross section of the community, and I think they pull from a variety of things. I know voter registration is one.
Tax things, your
yeah.
tax stuff is.
usually.
Your
Usually,
municipality,
socioeconomic
where you
bracket,
live, where you live.
yeah, because it has to be, for example, in. If you're pulling a jury for a municipal court, which is a city court, you have to live within the city. If it's
Sure.
for a county, then you have to live within the county itself. The feds do weird things. I'm not
It's-
entirely
I
sure.
mean,
You actually call them the feds?
Yeah.
That's not just a TV.
So
show.
we're talking, obviously talking about getting out of. So, like I said, I was like up for this. Like I was there and ready to do the thing.
Yeah.
Jacuz.
And even though
That's
and
French.
I do like I would certainly encourage anybody to
Absolutely.
do this sort of civic duty if the occasion arises. Especially, I have to say, probably those of you who are watching this thing and stuff, because of course the big problem is that the jury of your peers thing is that the people who are more inclined to have the time and inclination to go on jury duty will tend to be the people who are like retired or older or people
Or
who
financially well off, right?
financially
Who can
well
afford
off,
to not
right?
work and be
so
paid for that, yeah.
getting it is important for people from all walks of life to get onto that and do the jury duty thing in order to make sure that there's a good representation of different people.